All right, let's get right into it. We're about to crack open a 17th century poem that, on the surface, looks like this grand religious epic, but as you'll see, it's actually one of the most clever and savage political takedowns you'll ever come across. This is John Dryden's Absalom and Achitophel.
Now, when you first start reading it, the whole thing seems pretty straightforward, right? You think, okay, Dryden is just retelling a famous story from the Old Testament. It's a classic tale about a king, his favorite son, and a really, really bad betrayal.
And Dryden immediately introduces us to our star, our tragic hero, Absalom. And just listen to the way he's described. He's not just some prince, he's beautiful and brave. Dryden's painting this picture of a guy who's handsome, heroic, incredibly popular, basically the exact kind of person that people just naturally want to follow.
The original story, if you're curious, is from the book of 2 Samuel in the Bible. You've got the wise King David, his charismatic son Absalom, and then there's this shadowy advisor, Achitophel. He's the one who gets in the young prince's ear, whispering all this poison, and eventually convinces him to lead a rebellion to try and snatch the crown for himself. It's a timeless story of ambition gone wrong.
But here's where you gotta pause and ask yourself, is that all this is? Is Dryden, who was England's first ever poet laureate, really just dusting off an old Bible story for fun? Or is there something much deeper going on here?
And this is where we get to the absolute genius of the poem, because it's not actually about ancient Israel at all. Nope. It's a brilliantly coded commentary on a very real, very dangerous political crisis that was tearing apart Dryden's own world in 17th century England.
The literary weapon he uses to pull this off is called allegory, and it's such a clever trick. It basically lets a writer tell two stories at the exact same time. There's the story on the surface everyone can see, and then there's the hidden one, the real one, for the people who know how to read between the lines.
So what this means is that every single time you read about King David and his rebellious son Absalom, you're really reading about King Charles II and his political enemies. The entire biblical story is just a mask, a brilliant disguise for a political thriller that was happening in real time.
So, the big question is, who's who in this high-stakes drama? Let's peel back the mask and start decoding the key players on the political stage.
Okay, let's break this code down. The wise but kind of flawed King David, that's our stand-in for King Charles II. The handsome, super popular Absalom, he represents the Duke of Monmouth, who was Charles's illegitimate son, but everybody loved him. And the villain of the piece, the wicked counselor Achitophel, well, that's a direct shot at the Earl of Shaftesbury, a hugely powerful politician who is King Charles's #1 rival.
And believe me, Dryden does not pull any punches, especially when he's talking about Achitophel. Just listen to that description. He's basically calling him a genius, but a twisted one. Sagacious, bold, and turbulent of wit. It's a perfect and absolutely scathing portrait of a man Dryden saw as a dangerous master manipulator.
And these weren't just random historical figures. They were the absolute center of a massive national crisis. See, King Charles II had no legitimate kids to take the throne. The next in line was his brother, James, but he was Catholic, and that absolutely terrified Protestant England. So Shaftesbury spots his chance and starts pushing Charles's illegitimate Protestant son, the Duke of Monmouth, as the better choice.
This massive fight over who would be the next king became known as the Exclusion Crisis. And it wasn't just some polite debate. It pushed England to the very brink of another civil war.
And what lit the fuse on this powder keg was something called the Popish Plot. Now, you have to understand, this was a completely made-up conspiracy theory about Catholics plotting to kill the king. But in the paranoid atmosphere of the time, people bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. It just whipped up this insane anti-Catholic fury and made the thought of a Catholic king seem like the end of the world.
So, just look at how this all plays out. The panic kicks off in 1678, the political war rages for the next few years, and then, bam, right in the middle of it all in 1681, Dryden drops this poem. This wasn't just art, it was a political intervention, designed to sway public opinion. And the tragic thing is, his warnings came true. Just a few years later, Monmouth actually did lead a rebellion.
Which kind of begs the question, why bother writing a poem about all this? Well, because Dryden wasn't just writing poetry. He was forging a weapon, and his weapon of choice was satire.
And you don't have to take my word for it. Dryden tells us his goal himself, right there in the poem's preface. He says the whole point of satire isn't just to make fun of people, it's a tool for moral correction. It's a way to expose and ridicule the vices of society, hoping to actually fix them.
And man, did he have a long list of vices he wanted to correct. He goes after the politicians for all their scheming, of course, but he also goes after the public for being so gullible and easily fooled. He attacks ambition when it's not tied to loyalty, and he really goes after the whole idea of rebelling against a king who, in his mind, was chosen by God.
So, when you boil it all down, Absalom and Achitophel is an incredibly powerful piece of propaganda for the monarchy. By wrapping his political arguments up in a Bible story, Dryden manages to make rebellion seem like more than just a political mistake. He makes it feel like a sin, like you're going directly against God's plan.
And that's exactly why we're still talking about it hundreds of years later. This poem is so much more than just a historical document. It's a truly timeless story about power, politics, and the flaws of human nature.
And it's just packed with these amazing lines that have become famous all on their own. Take this one, about the fine line between genius and madness. I mean, wow, it's just a perfect example of Dryden's sharp, lasting insight into how people tick.
The poem's impact at the time was huge. It totally cemented Dryden's reputation as a literary giant, and it basically set the gold standard for political satire for centuries. It was a piece of art that actually shifted the political conversation, and it's still this fascinating study of how ambition can get so twisted by politics.
Which really leaves us with this one final lingering question. Think about it. Absalom was ambitious, brave, and people loved him. Achitophel was brilliant, bold, and incredibly driven. The poem forces us to ask, at what point does that drive to be great, that ambition, cross a line? When does it stop being a virtue and become a dangerous, destructive vice? It's a question that was just as relevant in 1681 as it is today.